So good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying with us for the last session of the day. I'm sure none of us is really enthused by the prospect of plunging headlong into the peak rush hour Bangalore traffic towards our respective houses. But then I would take it that all of us are really interested in how secure IoT is and what we can do to make it more secure. So I would like to thank all of you for being with us. And the title of our talk today, if I can see it from here, okay. What are the biggest IoT security threats and how do we tackle them? Now that's quite a mouthful of a title, but then you should understand that why is that we are having so much alarm about IoT security? Basically, Internet of Things means a lot of things to a lot of people. But to make it very simple, it is basically devices talking to each other on the internet. Now, what makes it special is the wide diversity of use cases that IoT is able to address. And this diversity encompasses companies across the spectrum. It includes companies that are just taking their baby steps into IT enablement at one end. And at the other end, it includes companies that are at the cutting edge of IT enablement. So this diversity makes things very interesting, and this also makes it challenging for all of us. And this is what we are trying to address in today's session. So without wasting too much time, I'd like to introduce to our panelists. To my leftmost is Dr. Harish Pant. Harish is the managing director of Hamson Industries. And Hamson manufactures precision machine parts and sub-assemblies for aerospace and aeronautics. Harish has more than 32 years of experience. He has developed global vision and sustainability model, and now is further researching on the three currency model for social, environmental, and economical impacts. I think we should discuss that in detail later. He has been awarded with Outstanding Corporate Award by MTC Global, IMMI Operational Excellence Award, and Mother Teresa Excellence Award, and the Award for Industrial Development. His interests include poetry, blockchains, and cryptocurrency. Harish will share his thoughts from primarily a user perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, Harish Pant. To my left is Mr. Ramraj Srinivasan. Ram is the founder of Preva Systems. Preva develops solutions for contextual business automation, and their flagship cloud platform is called Wise 3. He has close to 30 years of experience, and he has been associated with companies such as Wipro, Sasken, Mascon Global, and Motorola. He has a solid entrepreneurial background. He co-founded the Communications Technologies Division for Mascon Global in Bangalore, and he built a team of more than 400 plus telecom engineers with clients such as Motorola and Alcatel-Lucent. Ram has won several awards in Motorola, including engineering excellence for his work. He has also co-authored a book on parallel computing in 1992 and recently published a technical paper in IEEE on IoT. We hope to hear from Ramraj about his experiences and thoughts from a platform architectural angle. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ramraj Srinivasan. To my right is Mr. Rohan Vibandik. I am sure some of you would have attended his session in the morning, and I'm told that it was a very interesting session. Rohan is a scientist, cyber intelligence with ABB Corporate Research Center. Now, as you all know, ABB is an acknowledged leader in electrification, robotics, industrial automation. Rohan handles the design and forensics aspects of security. He has assisted the Government of India authorities for cybercrime investigation and computer forensics. He has numerous security certifications such as CEH, CHFI, ECSA, LPT, as well as ITIL business modeling. Rohan's entire work history is associated with security. He has worked as lead network security engineer at Cisco and was involved in research and development for e-commerce security platform at the San Jose Research Foundation and the Stanford University. Thus, Rohan is the go-to man for security design and troubleshooting. He will shed light on the nature of threats and what makes IoT-enabled devices different from others in their vulnerability profile. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rohan Vibandik. To the rightmost is Mr. Sachin Sinha. Sachin is the CEO and founder of IQLect, a real-time big data analytics company. The mission of the company, as it says, is to make real-time big data analytics simple, pervasive, and affordable for all. IQLect's platform allows security experts to detect threat, monitor devices and applications for security measures in real time. Sachin has informed us that IoT installations form a sizable portion of his users. Sachin is also the author and creator of BangDB, a new SQL database designed for real-time analysis and monitoring. I think BangDB by itself is a very fascinating area to be discussed. Before IQLect, Sachin was the CTO at Jabong.com, and he's also the co-founder and CTO of LimeRoad.com. He has worked with Amazon and Microsoft as engineering lead. Sachin is thus best positioned to address issues concerning the impact of specific choices in analytics platform industry on IoT security. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sachin Sinha. My name is Kaustubh Parkhi. I am a principal analyst with Insight Research. Insight Research is a 27-year-old company, and we are into telecommunications market research. Our focus areas are information opaque markets and data that is hard to quantify, and technologies that are nascent or just about launched. Some of the areas that I am working on include IoT, 5G, NFV, SDN, and BYOD. I have published about 30 market research report papers, and I also assisted numerous customers in their customized consulting assignments. So let's move ahead and let us find out why is IoT security important. Excuse me? Okay. Yeah, there we are. Thanks. We don't have too many slides, so I will not be doing this very often. But you have to bear with me when I have to do it. So the reason is not very difficult to gauge. We are looking at very, very big numbers. If you look at the cumulative feeling of all the forecasts and how people are looking at IoT, IoT by itself is a virtual parallel economy when by itself. You know, you're looking at almost like trillions of dollars of revenues. Like the Cisco published its recent VNI, and they said that IoT will represent 50% of all connections in the world. We ourselves are working on a report outlining analyzing the revenue opportunities for telecom operators and other stakeholders from IoT, purely from a wide area network point of view, and we have found that revenue opportunity alone to be in the range of $200 billion. I'm not considering other end user devices, local area installations, small area, personal area installations at all. So this just gives you a feel of what big numbers we are talking about. There are a few more important aspects from a security perspective. One is the emergence of low power wireless standards. So these standards, as in case of other standards, what happens is that technology always overtakes security. So technology goes first, security follows it. So we are having IoT as a potpourri of personal area network standards, local area network standards, and wide area network standards. And all these are enmeshed together and formed complex networks. So the security paradigm for this can be vastly different from our conventional networks because of, primarily because the personal area network standards are designed for devices with very limited computing power. So they are not able to take the overhead that high-tech security encryption standards demand. User awareness is a major problem. As you would have already known by now, the Mirai botnet attack just exploited the default settings in most of the devices, and you can see what havoc it created. And one of the earlier presenters was talking about the problems, the vulnerabilities of the healthcare domain that IoT exposes. Now, I have one study in front of me which says that there's a company called Widescope, and it discovered 8,000 bugs that hackers can exploit in pacemaker programmers. These include the tools that are used to adjust them and monitors the device itself, And these pacemakers were not just from one manufacturer, they were from 4 different manufacturers. So you can see what we are really up against. And the most interesting challenge, and which can also be an opportunity, which again another just the previous speaker discussed before us, is industrial M2M. See, industrial M2M, while we expect it to be the most prepared vertical for IoT, in reality, it is so disjointed and the nature of use cases is so diverse that unlike other verticals like say telematics or logistics, uh, there is no commonality of implementation. And if you look at the revenue opportunity and look at the use case diversity that industrial IoT presents, it is tremendous. Like ABB acquired a company recently called B&R Systems, and the CEOs of ABB mentioned that the installed base of the combined entity is 70 million connected devices, 70,000 control systems, 3 million automated machines, around 27,000 factory installations around the world. So you can imagine the kind of opportunity that we are staring at. And all this will be brought closer to the world at large because of IoT. So with this introduction, I will now pass upon the discussion to my co-panelists. And we will be conducting this discussion in rounds. So I will be having a set of questions which I'll be passing on to all the panelists. And I'll take their views. And any questions that you may have, you can please ask after we have finished with all the rounds. This way, we can take as many questions as we can, and we can hear from them, and we can draw from their experiences. So the first question that I want to ask is, what is the single most acute security challenge in your view? I'll start with you, Harish.
Hi. In the lean, I'm coming from the hardcore manufacturing background. So we often talk in manufacturing lean. Now I think the same is happening with the IoT. We have to make security as a central for our every decision making. The two aspects come to my mind, whereas manufacturing, hardcore manufacturing is concerned. One is that what is the value creation happening for the customer? And second is what is the most valuable for the organization which is doing the value creation activity. What happens in a tiered manufacturer when you are making a very low value product, then talking about security and other things becomes, not justifiable. So I think the biggest perspective from the manufacturing arena is that we need to change our perspective itself first. Because we are still fighting basic issues of supply chain, operational issues, structural issues. Things are known, information is known, problems are known. We are struggling through that. So we need to have a very step change in our perspective that no, what is the most value to the organization that has to be secured while we are pacing up the value creation activity. Both are important. Previously, an employee used to leave and he used to carry information knowledge with him. Now, if an employee wants, he can carry all what you have. Okay. So you will be left with nothing information.
So basically,
for that to have a value, first the owners, the top management people, they have to change their perspective that no, we are doing something, whatever information, data, knowledge, experience, whatever we are gathering, it is of utmost value. If you are not having anything of value in the organization, better you close down or you will get closed down because of the competition. Only simple value creation for the customer is not going to work. So my take is that we need to change perspective throughout, across the supply chain, all the tiers down to the level. Then only this IoT awareness will come in our country.
So basically you're saying that we need to identify what is valuable and secure that as much as we can.
Yes.
Right. Ram, your take.
Yeah, actually, I was about to say, but that is pretty much applicable. I tend to agree with Dr. Harish because it happens with the small and medium businesses in India up to 500 crores. And individual customers. As individuals, we don't have much of security awareness. I have done an exercise in my flat I was sharing. In my flat, I had easily, you publish the SSID Wi-Fi. I just got that and I tried the mobile numbers, I tried the name 00. There are 4, 5 things I tried, I cracked 3 of them. Then I looked at the make of that Netgear, whatever, right? You can go there and there is a clear default. I go in, you can go and hack it to it. Absolutely no awareness, okay? Either in small and medium as well as this. Second is, what I am saying is, people look at cost versus this. So I have about 75 customers in India in my own company. Wherever when it sold the devices, when it came to security, and a secure device where there is encryption allowed, and versus non-secure where there's about a difference of 1,600 per device, but people have opted for a non-secure device, our customers. Whereas the multinationals who have got some IP to protect, I had worked in Motorola, I had worked in Sasken, okay? All of these places, there is a lot of awareness about security. We have been trained as employees on the security. In fact, in Motorola in 1997, we had a group I headed called POPI, Prevention of Proprietary Information. So we used to do on Saturdays sudden check to all the dustbins to see whether anybody has thrown it and it's not shredded. That much awareness was there because of the security, the IP violation. Whereas now, if you see that, even today, in many of the SMBs and this, we have to go and give the awareness. That's the biggest security threat we have today.
Right. So basically, you're saying we are penny wise, pound foolish, at least in the SME sector when it comes to security. Rohan, how about you?
So first of all, it's good that we have a mixture of diverse people. So you are getting a combined answer, the complete package. So talking about more technical aspect about it, so I would say replacing or upgrading your device, that is the biggest problem. Or if you want to patch your IoT, if you want to patch it up your IoT device, that is the biggest problem. For example, there are few IoT devices, let's sensor, which are monitoring your all UAVs or drones, which are at border security force. So those are placed there, let's say glaciers and over there in minus 80-degree temperature. So over there, if it goes down or you have to replace, it is very difficult in certain time span to go there and change it or replace it. The second thing is if there are a lot of time critical and business critical operations are there. So, or maybe life critical operations. So in that case, you cannot shut down the plant or any working system just for a second. It is not possible for them. So in that case also, you want to upgrade a patch of it, that is a bit different. So for that you need to have, certain set of mirror devices or backup devices. And that costs a lot because you are not upgrading the devices on daily or periodically basis. It depends on your firmware update. So at a time, maintaining the whole infra with all the backup or mirrors, or maybe putting those, shutting down system for some time, it is very cost effective. So, I'm going to say it is a very costly system. So that's why it is one of the biggest challenge different devices in the world are facing. For example, if you're having mobile device, you know that, okay, if you're having an older device, you cannot get the newer update. So now that device has been out of their obsolete device. You just change the device, you get a new mobile, which you can get a latest OS upgrade. But it is not the same way in your normal or IoT devices. So that is the biggest challenge I would think.
Right. So upgrade and update management of IoT devices. Right. How about you, Sachin?
Thanks, Kaustubh. Hi, everyone. While I agree with all the points that my co-panelists have already raised, I will cover this point from my own perspective and my own background. If you see, 10 years ago, we were actually trying to secure servers. And there were a handful of servers, we were aware of that. Then, after 5 years, we started securing the mobile platforms also. Again, you could count how many mobile platforms are there. Now, there are a plethora of devices. We have sensors, we have cameras, we have wearables, we have appliances, and we have so many other devices coming every single day. Now, now bring the context where there is a lack of standard, lack of protocols. Now, while this is the scenario, even if you try to put enough security in the place, and if you try to secure your devices and your servers, there are chances that hackers are always going to be one step ahead of all of us. So how do we try and bring in some of the predictive monitoring into the place? So the biggest challenge from my perspective is that We need to understand that there are going to be real deluge of data coming in from all the devices and all the servers. And then we need to capture those intelligence, those data. We need to extract the intelligence and try to do some predictive monitoring in place. Even if we put a lot of security in place, it is always good to have the monitoring, and especially the monitoring in predictive manner. So there is a concept of doing the forensic. When something has happened, then you are analyzing. I think in IoT, especially in this area, that model is not going to work. We have to predict if there is a threat, if there is a potential threat, and try and see how we can address that. So this is one of the biggest challenges, according to me, and this is what actually I've been doing on daily basis.
Right. So as you can see, we have a cross-section of views, starting from identification of assets, identification of important value, identification of value, then not being short-sighted in in spending, and then updating and upgrading your end devices periodically, and then finally proactive maintenance. So all these four gentlemen are coming from different backgrounds, so you can see and you can relate their views to their backgrounds. And what I'm trying to say is essentially IoT is like an elephant, and we are like all the five blind men around it. We'll try to make sense of this security paradigm from our own limited perspectives so that you get a complete picture. Going back to Harish, what is your present level of IoT adoption? What are your plans?
See, IoT adoption in India is very rare, and it is happening in some of the pockets of multinational companies across India, but it's a few and far. Particularly if you come to aerospace, we import raw material, we do some value addition, we export again to various developed countries' customers. So in this process, what happens, it's a 6 months cycle. And again, we make tiny parts to very complicated big parts. So considering the complexity of supply chain operation, regulatory, quality certification processes and all, it's a long drawn, it is called that aerospace is the slowest supply chain in the world, and it is even slower than the snail. So in this kind of environment, it becomes very challenging. And but what is happening at the other end, if you see, like now engine management, like Rolls-Royce makes engine, and they get paid by hour it runs. Okay. So now asset, selling is not happening, but service selling is happening. So all these things comes through IoT. Continuous data, terabytes of data is oozing out from the engine management system, continuously getting real-time monitored, analyzed, and by the time aeroplane lands, the whole data has been churned out, and whatever testing and all has to be done before the next flight, that is being done. Also, we see that in defense particularly, now you know that everything is now connected, integrated, and it has become a digital theater in the whole world. Smart manufacturing, the concept is coming. It is still in a very nascent stage. Lot of mindset change, investment, value creation. What is of value we have inside the organization, that realization has to come before it really picks up and becomes a force to reckon with in India.
Right, so even within a given industry, where you are placed determines how much of IoT you are going to embrace, and where geographically you are placed. Say in a country like India has a different set of rules. A country like US may have some different set of rules. So it is not it's not as if since you are a supplier to the aerospace industry, you have to compulsorily go for IoT-enabled operations or IoT-enabled products. It depends on what you are selling, to whom you are selling, and how it is being used in the end.
Absolutely. If you see a lot of aerospace companies in India, even the companies which are slightly bigger, they are doing few million-dollar business. And so India has to really go beyond making to the print. It has to go to a high level of designing, innovation, creative, aspects, so that it pushes up the value creation. When you push up the value creation, and you have a patented designs, innovations and all, then you are creating high value, then you are creating high margins, and then you have something to protect of value.
Okay.
When you are a very simplistic small component manufacturer and all, you don't have much of a value anyway. So you give it a last priority.
Right, right. That's very nicely and very candidly put. Ram, you are a platform, you're a platform designer. So, can you just explain what are the vulnerabilities of IoT at each stage of your platform? Say like network, server, middleware.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the lowermost end of the platform, see IoT architecture, if you see in a simplistic way, we can put it as the lowermost is the devices or sensors, right? Then the next is the network through which the devices communicate the information or data to the main server. Then, of course, the main central server component, which is actually a platform that we deal with. And the fourth is the application itself. There are 4 layers. So device, I think, there is a wealth of information to my right here, so I will not touch upon that. The only thing that I've really sensed in the device layer is so far, these devices come from different various vendors, right? And there are few vendors who incorporate security in that. There are few vendors who are willing to even incorporate SSL certificates into the devices, but they all come at a price. And there are many vendors who really don't care. They're not even aware. So there are variety of devices from different vendors. So they're very high, they're prone to vulnerabilities. Okay, so I'll have Vivek touch that. So the next is the communication layer. So earlier we talked about PAN, WAN, and all different types of networks, as body area network, and so many networks are there. So that's definitely a huge vulnerability. Wireless area networks are very prone to eavesdropping. While wireless networking prone to eavesdropping, you can do man-in-the-middle attacks, you can do any of those attacks there. Very easy to crack. I used to work in Motorola earlier, so they are very prone to attacks. So that's one big area. Wi-Fi I shared with you, I myself could crack many of them. WP is easily crackable. So WPA2, if it comes, it's a little bit difficult, but it can be cracked. So there are a whole bunch of vulnerabilities with respect to the networks. Then comes your platform. Again, platform, there are 2 different layers. One is the data layer and the application layer. In data layer, again, you have to protect the data. Security of so we all my platform is actually, multi-tenanted. So I had to separate out the data, the database for different customers, different tenants. And I have to ensure that the data is scrambled to make sure that, even the administrator, the cloud administrator cannot peep into the data. So all of those things, the data security comes into that layer. And again, the top layer again has connection to external interfaces, either to a SAP of our customers, ERPs, or we also send it to the other messaging frameworks. Okay, so so external interfaces are there. Again, there are vulnerabilities in communication as well as authenticating the external things, and our own platform can actually run distributed way. So it can run in multiple servers. So from one server to another server, when we communicate, we have to ensure that we authenticate the other server and communicate. There are challenges. And finally, the application. The application is very similar. It either runs on your Android platform, iOS platform, or a web application. The challenges are same as your IT security. So there are so many vulnerabilities across all these layers.
So some of them are common to the conventional network, some of them are exclusive to the IoT network. Coming to Rohan, what makes IoT devices more vulnerable to specific security threats as compared to conventional network devices?
Okay, so actually, yeah, the answer goes very much in line with what Ramjas has just explained to you. So the first part I would say is about resource constrained environment. So for any of your IoT devices, it is having limited memory. So that's why, you cannot have a very heavily loaded algorithms running on that. You cannot have, you cannot have a heavily loaded algorithms on that. The simple example would be in many of the plants, like oil and gas sector, there are certain small motors are there. If you want to read the data from the motor, they are using Bluetooth sensors. And from Bluetooth sensor, they are capturing data and sending to the main server. But what happens that Bluetooth beacon, So what is Bluetooth beacon? When you try to connect your mobile phone to another mobile phone, then you switch on your Bluetooth. Then there is some ID is shown on your mobile phone, right? That ID is nothing but a Bluetooth beacon when it broadcasts. So that broadcasting particular ID, that is completely in a plain text. You cannot encrypt it. The reason is the Bluetooth beacon, the size is hardly 32 bits, and in that, on that Bluetooth beacon is a low power device, and you cannot run any of the encryption algorithm on that. So that is the reason it has to send in a clear plain text format. And if your, let's say there is some internal attacker is there, or maybe some internal threat, some attacker have found some Stuxnet or some malicious code is there, they can read such information, they can send it out. So that is one of the things it happens with IoT devices. The second thing is about a different side channel attack. So the extension of side channel attack is a Tempest attack. So Tempest attack, what is side channel attack is like if you are having a PCB, it's a printed circuit board which you generally say as a motherboard or whatever. So in that you see the edges are generally rounded off. They are not in 90 degrees section. But there are a lot of new startup companies that do not know. So similar to like your software development, there's a hardware development. There should be some architecture or procedure to be followed. So they do not measure those particular things. They make it like a angular discussion. So that acts as an antenna, that particular track on your PCB. And over there, you can sniff all the voltage data from that particular tracks. So that is called as a Tempest technology. If you're watching Hollywood movies, it has been, many times it has been shown over there. So over there, what happens is, that particular line or that is a track, that is nothing but your voltage or current ratings, which are triggering your particular instruction in your chipset. So for that, from there, you can understand what kind of instruction is passing through your board. So now the voltage value or distance is 1, now 0, 1, 0. So you can actually find a pattern and get the instruction what is going through your motherboard. So you can then change the instruction and change the trigger to actual processor. So this is the biggest vulnerability in such kind of IoT devices. And if you compare to normal devices like your computer system or whatever, so they are flexible. They are having dynamic bandwidth. You have certain room to extend, minimize RAM, maximize RAM or something. So this way it cannot be happen in your IoT devices. So that is one of the biggest threat.
So basically, what we need to do is restrict the kind of usage rules governing that particular end device, because it is anyway having such limited computational power, and because you cannot load them with all the
And even
heavy
if you are loading it, it goes into buffer overflow, either memory overflow.
Right.
Then again, you are having some kind of unavailability or unintentional DOS attacks on your own system. So, sorry, that is another possibility from that. So, that is the care you need to take.
Right. Thanks, Rohan. Sachin, you mentioned about proactive monitoring and how analytics helps in preventing attacks rather than firefighting. So whatever decisions you take while designing the analytics architecture has a bearing on the security. So I want to focus on one specific area, that is the choice of memory that you use for the design of your analytics platform. What implications does it have for the security of your platform?
So, as Ram actually beautifully laid out the overall structure of the software stack, and Rohan was talking about some of the problems of scarce resources that we have to deal with at the edges. You would have figured out that at different layers, we have different requirements. Now, at one layer, the same requirement, the similar parameters could be manageable, but when you pull the context into the picture, each layer is actually struggling to deal with their own resource requirements. Now, at the edge level, let's say at the sensor level, we know that we have a limited resource in terms of memory and the processing power and bandwidth and everything. But today, if you see the structure, if you see the architecture from very high level, the devices are capturing the data, and they are sending data to one central resource server, and the server is actually analyzing and doing something. Now, this has been going on for a long period of time. Now, at the server level, now every data has to be captured, and every single piece of data has to be analyzed. So which means that, and we want to be predictive in nature. So which means that the processing power has to be very, very, fast. At the same time, we all know that if the moment we move out of memory and we go to the file system and disk, the performance actually drops significantly. So which means that most of the solutions that we have in the market, they are totally in-memory centric solutions. Now the problem with this approach is that, as Rohan was trying to hint, that the moment you have more data to analyze and capture, your tendency would be either to overflow and go to the file system. Then if you do that, then you lose the performance, and possibly you are going to miss some events, some interesting anomalies and all that. If you don't do that, and if you want to retain the performance, then you would start ignoring the set of data that you have to capture and analyze. Now, both of these are not suiting the IoT requirement at any layer. I just gave you the example of one data layer, but you can actually borrow the same concept and try and apply at different layers as well. Now, the second problem here is that we want to analyze the data as fast as possible, but we need the ability to go beyond the memory also at the same time, and remain the cost effective as well. So this actually brings in some of the new concepts of flash device and SSDs. And I particularly believe that we need to create a hybrid model over there where the SSD comes and they play their own role over there, but not in a typical traditional manner where we have been using flash systems as a replacement of file system or as a replacement of disk. That won't serve the purpose, because SSDs or flash devices, they remain faster disk, but they are very, very slow when the performance is compared with the memory. So they have to be used as an extension of virtual memory rather than a replacement of file system. So that's point number one from my side in terms of actually how do we deal with the memory when it comes to dealing with the deluge of data, which is going to happen when we have a lot of IoT devices and all that. The second point I just want to highlight over here, which is also very important, is that the overall procedure of collecting, sensing data and collecting and sending to server, in my opinion, that has to be changed. Because this is an approach where the local guy is seeing something, but asking the remote guy who is sitting somewhere else what to do. That guy has to take some action also. And if we do that, so basically the local analytics has to be now as part of the system. And when you do that, then there are a lot of things that suddenly gets improved. The number one is you don't send 100% of the data, because there are a lot of things that we have done locally itself. You optimize the network bandwidth, you actually reduce the load of the server, and then you actually increase the rate at which you will flag some of the simpler things, which is so local. So let's say the temperature going beyond 80, it is local. Server has no business to answer that the local temperature has gone beyond 80. The sensor who is collecting should do that. And that is actually, the good part is that the industry is moving towards that. Recently, the Amazon launched something called Green Grass, which is very much in that direction, where the piece of analytics is also getting embedded into the devices, the sensors, and they are now able to do some simpler analytics at the local edge. So the load has to be distributed. The memory part has to be tackled from the perspective of going outside RAM, but at the same time being performant in the delta range, which is acceptable. And these can be done with the, in incorporating some of the new hardware and the software development that are happening around us.
So basically it's a tightrope, whether it is in memory or external memory, whether it is centralized or local edge. Thanks, Sachin. Now let us talk about money. Because every investment that we do in security has repercussions on the finances of the implementer. So Harish, coming to you, what value do you see in IoT? I mean, what type of considerations would you take into account while budgeting for the security demands of IoT-enabled devices? How much money will you spend?
I have to answer it differently, again from manufacturing. See, we are seeing a peer-to-peer model. We are seeing, a decentralized model. And so in this kind of a world where things are connected, decentralized, peer-to-peer, those things and all, and then we have a very old organizational structure in manufacturing domain where everything is command and, army is still working, still existing. So in this kind of environment, the changes are going to be, first, there will be a convergence. There will be a collapse. There will be a lot of obsolescence. Mm-hmm. For example, the macro trend, if you see, I foresee that post-GST implementation, there will be sudden agility in the whole supply chain and operation thing. You are paying the taxes upfront, so it will make you to produce only when it is needed in the market. And you will be producing closer to the consumption based, because this is a consumption based taxation.
Right.
Second thing, e-commerce. E-commerce has suddenly brought a very interesting phenomena in whole supply chain. So that is second. Third is your e-vehicle. Now people are talking about millions of vehicles in India will be operating by 2020, not 30. And all the macro players have started their game in this field. So if you see the energy, again solar. So what is going to happen with all these things? There will be huge obsolescence.
Mm-hmm.
There will be at least, at least 30 to 40% industries are going to close down. And with this kind of a massive closure, massive collapse, there will be a convergence happening. And then, like e-vehicle require 1/10 or 1/100th of the components, because all the engine components goes out of this thing. So a lot of simplicity in manufacturing, whole design concept changes and all. So with all these things happening at the same time, and by 2020, a lot of these things would have taken ground. Then your value creation will suddenly increase multifold. A case in example is Tesla, which is now valued more than General Motors. Tesla creates multiple times of value from a given manufacturing setup. It has created a benchmark itself, and it is going to be a benchmark for all the automotive manufacturers to catch up to. And they will take years in this. So what happens when that kind of a value shoot up happens, then the concept of IoT, investment in all these things will happen. So I think it is too early for us. The real and serious game will start happening 2020 onwards, when this IoT will sink in, and hardcore manufacturing people will also start thinking in IoT and investment and those things.
When I asked you this question, I really did not have an idea that IoT is, linked so deep with the larger macroeconomics of our country. But thank you for making this, bringing it out so simply and so logically. Ram, you have any rule of thumb coming to security budgeting?
Yeah, I will view from a different. I used to wear a hat as a senior management in Motorola, then Mascon, Sasken, where these are different large companies, but stable companies where IT infrastructure is in place, right? So we used to budget, our thumb rule is approximately 4 to 5% of our revenues used to go into the IT budgeting itself, okay? Of which around 9 to 10% was on the all types of peripheral security, okay, with firewalls, intrusion detection systems and things like. This is how we used to do it in the past, okay? Now, actually speaking, I had a lot of inputs in this particular, on this day, this conference, I had a lot of information from morning. I think we should really not look at IT security as part of the IT budget. I think we should separate it out.
Right.
That's what my learning is. So I'm going to work with my team and make sure that, we used to budget 20% for the testing. We build IoT platforms, cloud platform. So 20% for the testing, so I'm going to put 8 to 10% for the vulnerability testing and analysis of the platform, so that we at least ensure that we comply with a lot of things from a development perspective. That is what my takeaway today has been. As from the budgeting perspective, some of you, if you're leading the IT companies, I think you should spend probably another 1 to 1.5. See, 1.5% of that 5% IT budget used to be for the operations, IT ops. Okay, that was what I seen in Sasken, I'd seen in the other companies. So I think roughly about 1.5% you have to budget it for security-related testing and activities.
Right.
Okay,
Right. Yeah.
because it is not that straightforward. So you do vulnerability analysis using one tool today. 6 months from now, you have to use a different tool to attack.
Right.
Because the attackers are extremely smart. They figure out and then they will use the similar technique. So you have to use this constant need for securing your networks.
Right.
So that's my view.
Right. Thanks, Ram. Rohan, you had mentioned about internal and external threats to the IoT network. So what is the nature, what is the difference between these threats? Which one of them is more lethal?
Actually, if you say a well and a valley, both are dangerous. So internal, external, both are dangerous. The differentiating point I would say is if your internal threat it is like the attacker is from your internal organization. He has more access or physical access to all your database. So that's why it is easier access for him. But maybe an external attacker, if he comes into your network, he fetches all data, then the consequences would be the same one. The best example I would say, in the morning, if you attended that cyber law session, the OYO and the hostel, that was the example Mr. Beju mentioned, right? So the employee from OYO, he went to hostel taking all the data to that company. So that is nothing but like internal versus external attackers. So, and many times it happens that in your organization, maybe if you are not in good condition, rapport with your manager or management, then disgruntled employees are one of the more major things, like how internal and external, security threats are posing over there. So I would say in both are dangerous, but internal has like a more possibility of successful of the attacks.
I'll make this question a little more specific. See, like the previous speaker here, he mentioned that he has to get access to those registers somehow. So would an internal threat make it more easier to get an access?
Yeah,
External
because
threat make it more easy
the
to
thing
access?
is, the internal guy from that company, he might be having access to the blueprints of particular network. I mean to say the device. So maybe because of that, he can get directly access to the register. So he know which register works for what. So the one step is reduced from his recurrences phase. For external attacker, it is one more step.
No, is it easier to say compromise and to effect an internal threat in an IoT enabled device as compared to a conventional network
Yes,
device?
I would say, yeah. For internal, it is like
Okay,
easier.
right.
That's true.
Right. Sachin, what is the security overhead in two terms? One is, of course, the pricing. How does it add to the costs of your platform to your customers? And in terms of performance, how does it make it slower? Does it make it slower, or how is it?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Kaustubh. See, I have been trying to emphasize this point that whenever it comes to security, we try to put a lot of structure where we feel safe about those machine servers or devices. But analyzing every single byte of data is very critical. Now, we need to be unstructured in our approach so that we collect all the data from all various sources, and then we analyze them. Now, the moment you do that, or you want to do that, you are breaking away from the traditional model or architecture of data consumption or acquisition or analysis. So the first thing you encounter is that now I need to deal with all data and coming in from all different sources in different size, different shape, and different colors. That is point number one. Point number two, you can no longer collect data in batches and then try to do hindsight analysis because you are trying to prevent something. Then it basically hints towards dealing with the data in time series manner. So we need to have the time series data analysis infrastructure in place, which means that we will treat set of data as set of events, and we will analyze each single event to find out something interesting in it. So that is point number two. Now, the moment we put this kind of a constraints when it comes to the prevention or monitoring the data packets, then suddenly we have to deal with all sorts of data. Now imagine dealing with the network data. Now let's take the example of NetFlow, right? It sends data with the speed of 30 to 40 kilo packets per second. So 30,000, 40,000 packets per second coming in from a single device, from a single local infrastructure. Now imagine if you want to do that for all the infrastructure that you have got internally or on the public space. So which means that there is a humongous amount of data and very high, coming in from very high speed. So then we need to put in a lot of things into the place. So for first thing is we need to have a distributed architecture. We need to have enough resources in place. We need to capture those data. We need to put data in memory as much as possible. Memory being the costliest moving part in the overall system, it will add to the cost when you want to do that. You need to keep data for a certain period of time to analyze the pattern. There are a lot of interesting events which actually where you need to maintain the state also for, let's say, last 1 hour, 2 hour, in order to find the pattern or the completion of the pattern when it happens. then you can trigger something and you can take some actions. So all these things are actually adding towards cost and also towards processing power and the resources that you will need eventually to handle the situation. So dealing with security in preventive manner would eventually require you to deal with a lot of data. And when you need to deal with a lot of data in real time, you need to consume each single event as a separate entity. And when you need to do that, then you need to have a lot of resources in place and a lot of computing power in place to address that the problem. So this actually is a very costly proposition. And that's why you have folks like SAP HANA, where you pay $5 million to get one appliance. And there are many other guys where you pay a lot of tons of money. But there are certain things which we can do, and using that we can cut the cost and still remain the real time in the real time zone. And there are a bunch of things where we need the software to come and play the game. Now, one thing you need to appreciate, earlier days we need to throw hardware to solve the software problem. We have been doing it habitually for a long period of time. Now suddenly the data is growing, with a lot of speed, 10 times more than or 5 times more than the usual growth of the hardware, which follows typically the Moore's law. So we don't have that much of hardware to be thrown to a software problem. So, if we try to do that, then we are actually eventually increasing the cost. So to remain, in a cost, to perform these things in a cost-effective manner, we need to have a lot of software in place, and we need to deal with the software-defined system rather than the hardware-defined system. Hardware is going to play its role, but software is getting into the front seat, in my opinion, because using software, I can use the same hardware and be a little smarter and utilize those resources in an efficient manner. And there are tons of things over there in the open source area. There are many people who are researching in this area, and there are progress for all of us to see. But at the same time, this remains a problem where the initial progress has been very minimal.
Right. Thanks,
So the
Sachin.
cost is a very important factor, and cost is totally linked with the data that we are dealing with, and to process those data, how much resources we need, how much processing power we need. And if we go brutal way, the cost is going to be really high. If we be smarter, then we can actually hope to decrease the cost to some extent.
Thank you, Sachin, for the detailed explanation. Actually, this session is now only, it is gathering some momentum, but in the interest of time, I am going to keep it brief. And I'm going to actually curtail some of the questions that I had for this gentleman. So I'll skip to the last question, and that basically deals with what we call the aha moment in management jargon. So I'll just make it a little more specific. So Harish, any distinctive personal experience or anecdote that you have in relation to IoT security?
I don't know whether it can be called IoT, but there were certain, theft cases, and people were not working in C shift, so people persuaded me to put a camera. So I was very reluctant, so camera was put. Then people said, let us increase the width and range and all those things. So we put many. Then people said, we should continuously record it. There should be a central big monitoring system. So we put that. Then every week I used to go and see what's happening. Then we found this camera is not working, that is not working, all those things and all. Then people said, if we had a real time, if we can track it through mobile, then it will be a wonder. We'll be doing it. So we said, fine, identify 10 people and they can log in and they can track it anytime, any day. That happened. So I used to ask stupid, simple questions. What did you see today? When did you see it? Can I see it? No answers. At last, that screen was put in front of security room where security guard was sitting. He said, sir, I keep on seeing nothing happens. So then he was telling, sir, can it happen that when something moves, then only it records? So that I am not seeing it a blank, this thing. Then I read an article in Google wherein they have developed a device wherein when something moves, then only it records. Otherwise it doesn't. So I said, now we have to graduate to that to make this work. Ultimately, whether IoT or no IoT, the fundamental is that what impacts you want, what outcome you want from a system, and whether there is a definitive management commitment, employees commitment to achieve that or not. Then only all these things will work. Otherwise, it will not work. Sustainability, consistency, following, discipline, achieving the end result, those are the key things.
Right.
And this camera experience told me that for IoT thing to implement, we need to go a lot of mindset change, discipline and other things. Otherwise it won't happen. Like it is like in front of, nowadays if AC is not working, there is no button to tweak around, right? In India, we are very particular about if something doesn't work, we want to poke it, change it, do something, shake
Right,
it.
right.
But nowadays devices are coming where you don't have anything to, twist around, turn around.
Correct.
So ultimately, people who are familiar with the security system, IoT system, those population have to increase. Even it is happening in marketing field, that people are saying now future marketing leaders will be digital leaders rather than people coming with the marketing background. So with this kind of a orientation, the whole lot of, in the company and particularly manufacturing setup, whole lot of people have to go through transformation, a real transformation. And I hope it will happen very soon.
Right. Actually, cameras qualify as IoT, so
Yeah.
that is related to IoT. How about you, Ram? Is there anything interesting like changing the Wi-Fi
do that.
password?
So one thing to add is now there are video analytics solution where if there are events that happen, then you'll get an alert.
Right.
Then you can go and watch it. What is the real, what is
Right,
the thing?
right.
So there are a lot of things have improved now. We can look for those systems. Coming back to this, our IoT security aha moment is, it's just, we have to go and sell it to the customer, right? Nobody asks other than multinationals and with specific security, they have IP, then they are very particular. But here, one of the customers, I can name it also, Carl Zeiss. So we were working on, they wanted us to do an employee presence management system using Bluetooth BLE. So they gave us a surprise when they said, before deployment, they took all the BLE gateways for 2 weeks, and they ran vulnerability tests and cleared it, and then asked us to come and do the deployment.
Okay.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's really, anyway, because even though it's Carl Zeiss India in Bangalore, right?
Okay.
That really, was very impressive because we didn't anticipate that.
Right. Right. Very interesting anecdote. How about you, Rohan?
So maybe I will take one recent example. You must be knowing about the British Airway blackout, which was happened just a couple of weeks ago, right? So when you consider IoT security for, or maybe IoT infrastructure for your smart buildings, commercial sector. So at that point, when you are setting up your infra over there, so it is generally in a centralized manner, centralized server manner, like there is a one central server and it is managing various clients and proxy servers. So what happens in there, if there is a single point of failure, so main server is crashed, then whole system is blacked out. So that is what happened over there. So maybe it may attack or it might not be attacked, they have not revealed it. But in my opinion, so the now new technology has a trend, I won't say technology is a trend, that decentralized architecture is getting more and more popular in terms of IoT infrastructure. The advantage of decentralized architecture is like there is no single point of failure. So you have multiple nodes available in the network. Even if you want to upgrade or replace it, you still have another part of network working and which is acting in their turns as a client or server. So that is what could be the possible solution for such kind of big blackouts which happened in the British Airways case. So this is one of the examples. And apart from that, as I said, so in this IoT environment, when you are writing your firmware, so generally people use VxWorks. That is one of the most used language. There are a lot of other language packs are available. This is one of the maximum use. Around 70% of devices are using that. So in that case, many of the times when in commissioning phase, when the developer provides the VxWorks package to the client, and the client is developing product on that, they are not aware about how to enable security settings into that. By default, VxWorks is giving you port number 80 as an open port. But there is a setting that you can enable port 443 or another ports where you can have secure communication with your different industrial devices. So that is the little bit of a gap I would say that we need to fill up. I don't know, like it might be a certain, maybe that a developer should provide a certain training, or maybe if you are in the client side, then you should ask such kind of trainings for a provider to give us, okay, if you please give us the complete picture of your settings, so where we can configure it neatly so your product will be secure. So that is what in my experience, it has caused a lot of havoc because of not setting it correctly.
Okay.
So that is happening.
So you can touch two ends of the spectrum, centralized architecture and then port settings. Great. Sachin, how about you?
So if you've seen the previous presenter demonstrating how to hack a typical ICS using Modbus or BACnet, right? And he was able to change the register value and showcase that I can change the outcome of the system. So I would say that I have experienced similar things, but not on BACnet and Modbus, but on typical our own friendly neighbor TCP. Now, it was a pretty innocuous system, which was using JVM TI, which is Java Virtual Machine. Remotely you can instrument the Java code. So it was designed and developed, and we were using it to monitor the Java application. Now, we knew that this actually also provides the editing facility.
Okay.
So if you go to the monitor and you can change the value, you can in fact stop a thread, or you can change the thread value, the overall context, anything you could do. And then we allowed the client access for that. And then actually, we faced the consequences, because he did not understand whether he was monitoring or he was playing with the system.
Okay.
And he actually brought down the huge infrastructure in a big company, and it was down for 2-3 hours, and we were really trying to understand what happened, and it was not coming up.
Okay.
Because it changed the overall configuration also. So the point is, and of course, there it ran into millions of dollars, actually lot of millions of dollars. So sometimes we don't understand that we don't need very tight. So it is very much aligned with your question that you're posing to Rohan also, internal versus external. And this was all internal job without anybody realizing that we were actually exposing the security problem to outside world.
Right, Sachin. So actually the scenarios that from this presentation, from this panel discussion and from the previous presentations, you would have realized that the scenarios that they showed in the movie Die Hard 4.0 are not really out of the world. They can happen with a little effort from the concerned players. So with this, we come to the end of the panel discussion. I'd like to thank all my co-panelists for participating, and we are open to questions now.
Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, actually it is still vulnerable, but there is some workaround for that. For example, the thing is, there is a frequency. So every second or every millisecond, you need to set that at what frequency or at what rate it is emitting the new broadcast ID. So in that case, you can use a round robin algorithm. So at least you can have randomness of different Bluetooth IDs being sent. So that is like pattern is very difficult for attacker then to find out at what time which random number will be coming as ID. So that is a workaround as of now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, actually, this will go with the point which Sachin has mentioned, that you need to work proactively. So there is a solution. Like if you go through IC standards, IC 62351, Part 7, and Part 15. So what they are providing, they provide some MIBs. MIBs like management information base. They are nothing but the object IDs which collects the data from your device either through syslog or SNMP. Maybe older devices or newer devices, syslog and SNMP, and that data can be collected in your central repository, and that data can be processed, and from there you can collect the trend of different events or anomalies. For example, system uptime, system downtime. This is one of the MIBs as an example. Yeah. So this way you can manage the complete network.
So okay, thank you. Yeah.
See, that's an awesome question. There are many ways to do that. I mean, as Rohan was pointing out, MIBs and all that, and as she asked, we could collect those data and we could analyze. You could, when you are actually when you are using the SNMP protocol, and when you are trying to get the entire set of data, it's a huge, set of data. You get a lot of things, but that's not sufficient in isolation. What you need to do is to analyze the traffic also. Now, if suppose there are certain ports you know beforehand, they're not supposed to be open. Now you see that traffic is actually going through that. What you need essentially is someone to see that and tell you that this is something has happened which is kind of an interesting event, could be anomaly also. So that's where my emphasis on the predictive monitoring is. I was actually enforcing the similar points. You could have enough or number of things into place, but you need to analyze what's going on real-time basis, and then map it with your own setting and see there is an expectation mismatch. So that is number one. Another thing is, there are many security threats where you cannot capture all data. Now, let's say if you're getting the attack from outside, and there is IP spoofing, and there are many, many ways people are doing that. Recently, DNS, you all know the story, what happened, the DDoS attack. Now there, you cannot possibly capture all kinds of data. Now then how do we actually do something over there? The only answer, as far as I know today, is that we need to push as much of AI as possible into this area, which means that we need a system which learns learns from the data and then tries to predict something based on the anomaly detection. Now, here again, there are multiple nuances here that we need to appreciate. The older model of, the older way of training a model and then using that model on the data is not going to work here, because nobody understands, this is sitting in this room, you are dealing with 20 devices, let's say. We don't know what is the format of the data. We don't know what all patterns are hidden there. We don't know how much data is there. We don't know anything about it. So asking this question that you train a model based on your data is asking for too much. So here we need a real monitoring system which trains itself. And that's why the deep learning and the artificial intelligence is integral part of the system, where even if in the absence of the entire data set, you could still find some of the patterns, and based on that, you could do some flagging. So this is, I think, using these kind of techniques, you can do something, but still a lot of holes here. Yeah, I agree with you. My only submission was that in many of those scenarios, people try to take data, understand data, and then try to create a model and apply that model at runtime on those data. And this is pretty much, in a very layman-ish term, like teaching older dog to perform newer tricks. Now, I trained my dog on something else, and then I'm asking him to do something new based on this changing situation. So the important part is not machine learning, but the deep learning, which is I'm trying to highlight, where the system or model learns itself, seeing based on what data and what all scenarios that model is going through.
Okay, so